Get ready, because today's storm show might just outdo tonight's fireworks. A major severe weather outbreak is barreling across the country, and if you live along the East Coast, your 4th of July cookout could get rained, hailed, or blown right out. We're talking damaging winds, large hail, a few spinning up tornadoes, and enough atmospheric drama to rival any pyrotechnics display. So grab a seat, because we've got a lot of ground to cover. Today's threat, tomorrow's threat, Monday's threat, and what's brewing even further down the line. Let's not sugarcoat it. This is shaping up to be one of the more chaotic holiday weather setups we've seen in a while. Thunderstorms are lined up like dominoes, stretching from the Great Plains all the way to the East Coast, and none of them are going to play nice. Some will roar in fast with damaging gusts, some will drop hail the size of baseballs, and a few, just a few, could spin up an actual tornado. It's the kind of setup where you don't just check the forecast once and forget about it. You check it, you plan around it, and you keep checking as the day goes on. Thunderstorms are sweeping across the Great Plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the East Coast today, and they're not messing around. Widespread damaging winds, large hail, and a couple of tornadoes are all on the table. If you had big plans for tonight along the East Coast, there's a real chance smoke, and not the fireworks kind, could be in your forecast. Then, just when you think you might catch a break, next week our big ridge of high pressure starts to crumble. That opens the door for even more storms to fire up across the mid-Atlantic and the plains. And this next round could bring an added danger. Significant flash flooding layered on top of the usual severe weather threats. Honestly, this is the kind of unsettled, jumpy weather pattern that makes pets act weird and people restless. It's the kind of atmosphere that just feels charged, humid, twitchy, primed to erupt. So let's break it all down, day by day, region by region, starting with the main event, today. And to be clear, none of this is a one-and-done situation. This isn't a single line of storms that rolls through and clears out by dinner. We're looking at a multi-day pattern that shifts targets, changes intensity, and keeps overlapping threats in play from the plains to the coast. So buckle in, because the details matter here. Let's start with the headline. We now have a level 3 risk of severe weather in place today, and that includes areas like Washington, D.C. and just north of Richmond. That's a serious risk category, not something to shrug off on a holiday. Surrounding that, there's a large level 2 risk stretching across much of the interior northeast, plus another level 2 zone sitting over the central plains. Beyond that, a broad level 1 risk covers Indianapolis, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Kansas City, and even up into Minneapolis. The number one concern today is damaging wind. We're looking at a 45% chance within a 25-mile radius of damaging winds in the 60 to 70 mph range for the Washington, D.C. metro. That same corridor, Philadelphia down through Richmond, should see numerous to widespread damaging wind reports. If you live near Wichita or Oklahoma City, keep an eye on the evening hours. A line of thunderstorms is expected to fire up, and it could produce damaging gusts as high as 80 mph. Everywhere else, the wind threat becomes more isolated rather than widespread. Hail is also a real factor. There's potential for large to very large hail, we're talking baseball-sized stones, around Wichita, Kansas, stretching back toward Woodward, Oklahoma. And yes, there's a tornado threat too, though it's a low-end risk. That threat is centered mainly near Wichita and Hutchinson. It's not the headline threat of the day, but it's real enough that it shouldn't be ignored if you're in that corridor. Bottom line, if you're anywhere in this zone today, make sure you have multiple ways to receive weather alerts. Don't rely on just one method, phone, radio, local news, whatever works. Just make sure it's on and it's working before storms fire up, not after. Good news, and for most of you, Sunday's severe weather risk drops significantly compared to today. There's a level 2 risk centered on Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and near Richmond, with a level 1 risk near Pittsburgh and New York City. There's also a separate level 1 area further west, plus one more stretching across the far northern plains. Damaging wind gusts remain the primary concern Sunday, with isolated large hail also possible. The tornado threat, though? That should be fairly low to essentially zero for most areas. Right now, the only severe weather risk officially outlined for Monday sits across the far northern plains, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. That said, this picture could easily shift in future forecast updates, and storms remain possible across nearly the entire Great Plains and along the East Coast as well. We'll keep tracking that. Now let's slow down and go through today hour by hour, region by region, because a lot of you have outdoor plans and deserve specifics. The Midwest gets active again this afternoon. Expect a cluster of thunderstorms to fire up near Davenport, Springfield, and Chicago. The main threat here is damaging wind, similar to what happened yesterday. Speaking of yesterday, there were a couple of tornado warnings issued in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois, but as of now, none have been confirmed. It looks like it was mostly straight-line damaging wind, rather than actual tornadoes. Today could play out in a similar fashion. Could a brief tornado spin up somewhere in this cluster? Sure, it's possible. but generally that risk stays low. If you're near Lafayette or Chicago, stay alert this afternoon regardless. It's worth pointing out just how unpredictable this kind of small-scale or mesoscale severe weather really is. Timing shown in any forecast can shift. Yesterday alone, a line of storms rolled through Milwaukee and Chicago, somewhere between 2 and 7 p.m., and then supercells developed around 9 p.m. in northern Illinois. And some of that wasn't even fully captured by the computer models beforehand. So treat today's timing as a general guide, not gospel. Things can accelerate, stall, or shift track with little warning. Indianapolis and areas across Michigan look likely to see storms this afternoon as well, so keep plans flexible if you're anywhere in that stretch. Up in Minnesota, scattered showers and thunderstorms are on the table, with isolated wind and isolated quarter-sized hail possible. If you're setting off fireworks in Minneapolis tonight, storms could be knocking on your door right in the middle of the show. And this activity could continue through much of the evening. Make sure you've got a way to get alerts. And remember the old rule: if thunder roars, go indoors. Don't become the firework out there. This region has arguably the best shot at an actual tornado today. That said, the expectation is that these storms will upscale fairly quickly, meaning they'll grow into clusters that mostly produce strong downburst damaging wind gusts, up to around 70 mph, rather than sustained tornadic activity. Kansas City and Columbia could see stormy conditions during the early evening hours. Then somewhere between Wichita and Oklahoma City, one of these developing supercells may produce a tornado threat. That risk is low, but it's not zero. There's a localized atmospheric setup here that supports it. Beyond that specific threat, expect general storminess across Cape Girardeau, Evansville, Oklahoma City, and Tulsa this evening into the overnight hours, continuing into Sunday morning. This is where today's highest overall threat sits, even though, somewhat counterintuitively, the storms won't look particularly dramatic on radar or in forecast models. Around Washington, D.C., Virginia, and back toward Delaware, storms will fire up, but they won't tower like the classic supercells you'd see out in Oklahoma. Here's why that matters. These storms are working with surface temperatures around 100 degrees and very steep lapse rates, meaning the air cools rapidly as you climb in altitude. That combination sets the stage for significant downburst damaging winds, even from storms that don't look imposing. If these storms manage to cluster together, the damaging wind threat could become even more widespread. Nearly any storm that develops near Washington, D.C. today carries a meaningful risk of producing damaging winds. Storms are also expected over Pennsylvania and southern New York during the afternoon and evening, roughly around 7 to 8 p.m. Most of these will stay scattered rather than forming one continuous line. The overall severe threat should ease after sunset, but rain will likely linger. And yes, it will probably be raining near New York City, which could put a damper on evening plans. Big picture for the holiday. This is shaping up to be a less than ideal 4th of July for a large chunk of the country, since almost everyone has at least some chance of seeing rain today. It's not the forecast anyone wants to hear on a holiday built around outdoor gatherings, but that's the setup we're working with. Looking at the 24-hour precipitation picture from now through roughly 3 a.m., there's a high likelihood of rain stretching from Oklahoma up into Michigan. The Northeast also carries a numerous to widespread chance of rain. The good news, most of Texas should be fine. The West Coast looks okay. The northern plains should also stay dry. Minnesota, on the other hand, is in for a stormy night, and Wisconsin, along with Michigan's Upper Peninsula, will be more hit or miss. Likely dry overall, but with a chance of a stray shower or thunderstorm this afternoon and evening. On top of all the storm talk, there's another issue plaguing much of the country right now: brutal heat. Today's feels-like temperatures, heat indices, are climbing into the low 100s across the Carolinas and back through Washington, D.C., and even in parts of the Northeast like New York City and Boston. There's a little relief in the Tennessee Valley, where feels-like temperatures will only reach the mid to upper 90s today, an improvement compared to recent days. The Midwest is in even better shape, with feels-like readings only in the 80s, a big step up from what's been a rough stretch. Places like Minneapolis and Des Moines had recently gotten close to 105 degrees for feels-like temperatures, so this cooldown is very welcome. Looking ahead to Sunday morning, those feels-like temperatures continue improving. In fact, the weather looks like it's going to turn genuinely pleasant across much of the Midwest and Ohio Valley for July. Most heat indices will sit in the 70s and 80s, and actual air temperatures look reasonable too. The East Coast doesn't get that same relief, though. Record-breaking high temperatures are expected to continue there. So while the Midwest gets a much-needed break, the East Coast stays locked in the oppressive heat for at least a bit longer, on top of everything else going on with the storms. If you're hoping for a crystal-clear sky for tonight's fireworks, the outlook is mixed depending on where you live. Across the Great Lakes region and much of the Ohio Valley, expect at least mostly cloudy skies, with fully overcast conditions possible near Chicago back toward Kansas City. There will be some breaks in the clouds here and there. Across the southeast, most of Florida will also have cloud cover, driven by this afternoon's thunderstorm activity. The the clear winner tonight, the Pacific Northwest. That region will have essentially no cloud cover. Ideal viewing conditions if you're in that area. If you're planning on setting off fireworks anywhere north and west of Colorado, please pay close attention here. Fire danger has been significant across this region for the past week or two. Conditions are extremely dry, which means fires could spread rapidly if ignited. Relative humidity tonight is sitting around just 15 to 20% across most of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. That's more than enough dryness to spark a fire from a stray ember or spark. On top of that, wind gusts in some spots could reach 20 to 30 miles per hour tonight. Exactly the wrong conditions for open flame or fireworks. Please check your local burn ban status before shooting off any fireworks tonight. If fireworks aren't permitted in your area, don't risk it. Fires can spread fast, especially with wind gusts like these in play. One spark in the wrong spot with humidity this low and gusts this strong is all it takes to turn a celebration into a genuine emergency. If you're in the Tennessee Valley tonight, you're dealing with a different kind of trade-off. The ring of fire pattern remains in place, meaning there's a high-pressure system parked over the southeast. That setup keeps wind gusts fairly light tonight, which is both good news and bad news. The downside? With little to no wind, fireworks smoke will just sit in place, and visibility of the show itself may fade after a while as smoke accumulates. The upside? Even a slight breeze, just 5 mph or so, would be enough to push that smoke out of the way and actually improve how well you can see the fireworks. So conditions overall aren't bad here, but don't be surprised if smoke becomes an issue as the night goes on. Once the 4th of July wraps up, the severe weather doesn't just disappear, it shifts and evolves heading into Sunday. Sunday looks fairly typical for this time of year across the mid-Atlantic, pop-up thunderstorms producing some damaging wind gusts. The tornado threat should be very low to zero here. Don't rule out a brief, isolated spin-up somewhere, but overall risk stays low. Timing-wise, Washington, D.C., Allentown, Scranton, and back up toward Birmingham should be most active around 4 to 6 p.m. During the evening, those storms push toward New York City around 7 to 8 p.m., reaching Salisbury and Dover around 8 p.m. as well. By roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Time, storms should be moving offshore near Atlantic City and Brookhaven. If you're in the Cleveland or Pittsburgh area, a couple of isolated daytime thunderstorms are possible, but overall, severe weather risk stays low there too. Think scattered hit or miss activity rather than a widespread event. Sunday brings an active day here as well, with pop-up thunderstorms and isolated damaging wind gusts as the main concern. This is a classic Dixie Alley July setup. Random pop-up storms that typically don't amount to much in terms of severe weather, but are still worth watching. West Texas expect a couple of damaging wind events, plus maybe some large hail near Amarillo and back toward Wichita Falls. Overall severe weather risk across this area stays fairly low, Northern Plains and Manitoba. Across the Northern Plains, there could be 1 or 2 hail-producing storms in spots. But the bigger concern Sunday is actually north of the border in Manitoba, where damaging winds, large hail, and even an isolated tornado risk are all in play. Significant tornado parameter values are running upward of 3 to 4 there, a meaningful signal, meaning a couple of tornadoes are possible north and around Winnipeg. If you're tuning in from Manitoba, stay alert, because this could end up being the more notable severe weather story of the day, even though it's happening outside the more heavily populated parts of the forecast area. Monday's forecast, Northern Plains. Severe weather should continue across the Northern Plains into Monday. Current model data isn't showing a ton of storm activity, but north of the border in Canada, a couple of supercells could develop with an elevated tornado threat. South Dakota may also see some large hail and damaging wind events. Right now, Monday doesn't look like a major severe weather day overall. Tuesday actually looks like it has better potential for significant severe weather across North Dakota and Minnesota, though there's still real uncertainty in those details this far out. As always, with forecasts this many days ahead, expect some shifting as we get closer. East Coast and Southeast. Monday looks like a repeat of the weekend pattern here. Pop-up thunderstorms, downburst damaging winds, and isolated hail as the main concerns. Tornado threat should stay near zero across the Ohio Valley. That said, with this kind of small-scale, mesoscale severe weather setup, a quick spin-up tornado can occasionally happen. It's just nearly impossible to pinpoint where in advance. The silver lining? Heat relief is coming. Here's some genuinely good news to end on. The extended heat wave that's been gripping the country is finally set to ease up by the middle of next week. Temperatures will start trending downward. Feels like temperatures should drop into the 90s across much of the Central Plains. By Wednesday, actual high temperatures are expected to fall back into the mid to upper 80s and low 90s across Tennessee and back up toward Detroit and Milwaukee. So while the next few days bring plenty of storm activity, there's real relief from the heat on the horizon. After the stretch of triple-digit feels-like readings a lot of areas just went through, this cool-down can't come soon enough. Putting it all together, let's zoom back out for a second because there's a lot of moving pieces here and it's easy to lose track. Today, the danger is immediate and widespread. A level 3 risk hugging DC and Richmond, damaging wind gusts capable of reaching 60 to 70 mph in that corridor, an 80 km/h line possible near Wichita and Oklahoma City, baseball-sized hail in the southern plains, and a low but non-zero tornado risk near Wichita and Hutchinson. On top of the storm threat, dangerous heat is baking much of the east coast and southeast, with feels-like readings pushing into the low 100s. Sunday backs off the intensity but doesn't eliminate the risk. A level 2 zone still sits over the mid-Atlantic, with damaging wind and isolated hail the main concerns and tornado potential dropping close to zero. Monday shifts the spotlight north, with the Dakotas, Minnesota, and especially Manitoba carrying the most notable tornado potential, while the east coast and southeast settle into a repetitive pattern of pop-up storms and downburst winds. And zooming out even further, by the middle of next week, the oppressive heat wave that's been gripping so much of the country finally starts to crack, bringing real, measurable relief to places that have been stuck in the hundreds for what feels like forever. Today is the marquee severe weather day, with a level 3 risk centered on the DC to Richmond corridor, widespread damaging wind potential, baseball-sized hail possible near Wichita, and a low but real tornado threat near Wichita and Hutchinson. Sunday eases up, but still brings a level 2 risk to the mid-Atlantic. Monday's main concern shifts to the northern plains and into Canada. Layer in near-record heat for much of the east coast, fire danger out west, and a mixed bag of cloud cover for tonight's fireworks, and it adds up to a genuinely unsettled holiday weekend for a huge swath of the country. Whatever you've got planned tonight, keep an eye on the sky, have a way to receive weather alerts, and if thunder roars, head indoors. Don't let a beautiful holiday evening turn into a dangerous one just because the sky looked calm an hour earlier. These storms can build and strengthen fast, and mesoscale weather like this has a habit of surprising even the best forecast models. Stay safe out there and stay tuned for updates as this pattern continues to evolve through the week ahead.